I was talking to my mother today. She lives in another state, a couple of states away from me. And she's quite old now. She's about 104. I was adopted when she was about 44 years old. And so, she's very old and she's quite compos mentis. She's really, really good mentally, but her body, of course, at that age is kind of giving up. And she only just recently went into this home, which seems to be quite a nice place, but Mum's always been fiercely independent and was living in her own home with some support for, all her life really up until this point. And so I try to listen to her as compassionately as I can, when she talks about her frustration. And I've even offered for her to come and live with us here in Tasmania. But I don't think and I would love to be able to have her here in her remaining, year or two of life. But unfortunately, she probably doesn't feel like, she probably doesn't want to be away from people she knows and from familiarity and all that kind of thing. So, but the offer was there anyway and is there. Yeah, it's too bad that she probably wouldn't take it up. And I'm not saying that my mum doesn't have some difficulties, that she can be a little difficult sometimes, but she's really, really quite a happy person. Doesn't take much for her to be happy, and she's very, very generous, almost to a fault, really. So anyhow, but it's funny because, even though she's about 40 years older than me, I sort of think to myself, well, in 30 years' time, I'm going to, unless I am not healthy, unless at some point I develop a disease, but in 30 years' time, I don't expect to get anywhere near that age. So, I might be sort of gone in 30 years' time. And I think to myself, even if they brought in, even if we managed to turn everything around here on this planet and some miraculous thing happened and there wasn't going to be the end of our species, the fact is that in ourselves, even if they actually made everything where people could even live for, a couple of 100 years without disease, unless we have things sorted out in ourselves, within ourselves in a spiritual sense, and learn to or uncover who we really are, basically, instead of what we think we are, what we do, what people think of us, what we think of ourselves, and all the stories we tell us, unless we are able to connect with that, what, say, Eckhart Tolle might call the unmanifested. And this is just my opinion. I mean, there's probably plenty of people would not agree with this. And there are people that would. But unless we sort of connect with the one, which is, that we're just part of everything, basically, where we share the same essence as all the other animals on the planet, the trees, everything. We're part of the one, and we're born, and then we go back to the one. And what would be defined by Eckhart Tolle as the unmanifested. Unless we actually get in touch with that, it won't matter, if we have technology that can allow us to live for a couple of 100 years, if we suddenly have some miraculous thing that stops our imminent extinction due to the climate crisis, it won't make any difference because we haven't made peace with ourselves. And if we haven't made peace with ourselves, if we haven't connected to that which makes us inseparable from everything, and I'm included non-human animals and the planet and the universe even, if we haven't connected with that and uncover it, because it's not something that we need to search for, it's right here with us. And like I say, people may disagree with this and think, oh, that's a lot of woo-woo, but unless we connect with that within ourselves, which is something that is shared by everyone, including non-human animals, and everything on this planet and elsewhere, then we're never ever going to be happy. We're always going to be suffering, and we're going to cause suffering for others because of that, until we actually uncover what we already possess, which doesn't require any striving for. It just means for us to stop thinking, basically. To stop thinking, to stop formulating stories about ourselves, about other people, about other animals, about the planet and so forth. Stop creating all these stories and categorizing and all of that until we stop our constant storytelling about everything and just stop thinking and just be in the moment. Then it won't matter what sort of technological advances there are, and no matter how long we live, we're always going to be unhappy. And everybody right now is suffering. Everybody. Even those that have all the material wealth that one could imagine. They're not happy. They think they might be happy because they have power over others and all of that. But it's really not the case. You only have to look at how people with power and money behave, basically. So I look forward to the day when we basically stop conceptualizing about everything, labeling everything, and just stop thinking and be in the moment. And then everyone that we meet, non-human or human, and the planet, we all realize we're part of the one, and that's true peace and happiness. And when I say stop thinking, I don't mean that we become idiots and we don't think about anything. Of course, when we require that we do a task and that kind of thing, thinking is important, of course, but just in general, we can go back to being in the moment and meeting everything as it happens without our projections, without telling ourselves stories. Am I doing that every day or every moment? No. Do I try to? Do I try to just be in the present? I do. I do try. And it's made a big difference to me. I still do my activism, but I try and be in the moment throughout the day, and it's made a huge difference to me in a peaceful way. Now I'm going to get even more woo-woo on some people, but I remember Eckhart Tolle saying something to the effect of, every moment that happens, greet it and accept it as if you chose it. Basically, it's a bit like, and I'm saying this, sort of saying to oneself, it is as it is. That doesn't mean that we don't, of course, act, if we're in danger or someone else is in danger or, something requires action, of course. But we basically accept what happens to us. And we can, of course, do things about it, but instead of pushing against it and resisting, You know what it's like when something happens in your life and you say to yourself, oh, I wish that hadn't happened. I wish this wasn't happening to me right now. I wish I wasn't caught up in traffic. I wish I had more of this. I wish I had less of that. I wish this person wouldn't be this way to me. I wish I was this and that. I wish they were this and that. I wish the world was this and that. And when we're always resisting the present moment, when we're always resisting what happens and is happening to us every moment, we're causing ourselves suffering and other people suffering, and we're completely unhappy most of the time. And I'm just speaking for myself now. I don't expect anybody to agree with this, and you might think, oh God, what is she talking about? Isn't this supposed to be a political channel? Isn't this supposed to be also about veganism and all this sort of thing? I can't separate. I don't know if you've noticed with this channel, but I tend to sort of do things that are I tend to look at things in holistic ways. And I've noticed that the less that I resist the present moment and what happens to me, meaning if I accept it and then deal with it, then if I accept every moment as if I've chosen it, really, in a way, as if I've chosen what's happening to me every moment, then the less suffering I cause for myself. And the calmer I am, and the more peaceful I am, and also I can it helps one almost like glide through situations, because when you're accepting what happens to you every moment, then there's no resistance to it, meaning there's no suffering attached to it, really. And of course, I'm imperfect, and I have anger issues sometimes, and I get impatient. But I found that it's a very helpful thing, what Eckhart Tolle talks about, and he doesn't consider himself a teacher. He says he's just pointing in the direction of something that we all have, which is what I talked about just earlier. And I'm not even going to try and explain it. You can check that out for yourself in his books, but I found when I stop pushing back against and resisting what is happening to me each moment, it really, really makes a huge difference. And then when something really unpleasant happens, like something big, I'm able to bounce back from that fairly quickly, instead of where in the past I might have gotten quite anxious or angry about it. It actually, I come back down from, say, I might momentarily feel upset, and then it kind of subsides pretty quickly. And that doesn't mean that we all become complacent and apathetic, and we become disinterested in what's happening and disinterested in non-caring about the suffering of others, and that it doesn't mean that we don't do anything. It just means that in our own life, we just be present every moment and stop thinking and making up stories about every single thing that is happening in front of us, everything we see, even when we look at a tree, immediately labeling it, instead of just connecting with that which is the one, that we're all part of. Just being present and not thinking. I mean, this is just my thoughts. They're just, just something that I've found to be helpful, and maybe someone might find this helpful. I don't know, because there is so much suffering, so much suffering. I mean, I talk about it every day on Faint Signals from Vega. So much suffering in the world that it can be overwhelming, and one way of dealing with this is one way, which isn't, I really don't think that it's a fabricated artificial thing, or that it is being in denial of feelings. We can have feelings, but we just don't have to tell a story about those feelings. We can feel sad, but we don't have to tell a story about our whole past and this and that about it. We can have feelings and feel them, and that's okay. It's the stories and the conceptualization and the thinking and the labeling and the discriminations that we have about other people, about other animals. That's why I'm vegan, because I realized something about myself is that I was incredibly speciesist, and I still probably am. But I'm not eating, wearing, and using animals. I'm vegan. And so that's something that I woke up to. But if I'd continued on, and if I hadn't come across some information that woke me up, which was about dairy, I probably still would be going around thinking that animals are just here for us to use. They're just our resources, and that thinking causes the suffering and death of so many animals. So many. Completely unnecessarily, too, since we don't need to eat, wear, and use them at all. So our thinking and what we tell ourselves about the world and about others and about non-human animals is at the source of so much suffering, and our lack of presence, being present right now in the moment, and not thinking and not labeling. That is what's going to, I think, eventually bring the planet peace, inevitably, when we all start doing that.